This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
And welcome everyone, RTV Sports Rap back here as the Olympics continues and everything else seemingly is on hiatus. Spencer Byers alongside me, JC Coots and Manny Pava. And gentlemen, obviously the men's Olympic hockey has really drawn a lot of eyes, especially here in Canada. It feels like everyone I meet, no matter where I am, if I'm at the Bay Shore, if I'm at my day job, if I'm walking the streets, there's always somebody talking about the Olympics because it has really drawn the nation's eyes, as obviously usually it does when the best athletes are there, just like the Four Nations Face-Off did, not, 12 months ago, 8 months ago, technically. So I'll start with you, JC. Before we get into the men's, we want to talk about the women's first because their gold medal game is set. Canada will face off in a rematch against the Americans, a game that Canada lost 5-0 in the preliminary round, but that was without Marie-Philippe Poulin, so obviously a big boost to the Canadian offense as she had 2 goals in their semifinal, sending them to the gold medal match. So JC, kind of looking at that matchup in a rematch, how do you see that one unfolding for the Canadian women?
Well, they have not been very good against the U.S. Going back, I think the last 8 games they've lost to the U.S., and there was that real stinker of a game a few months ago, a friendly game between the two where I think the U.S. won something like 10-3. And unfortunately for Canada, they elected to go with a lot of older players. I don't know why they chose to leave some really good, young, talented players off the team. It seems like they opted for the big names and, the ones that have been there before. But the shape and the design of female hockey has completely changed since the PWHL came in. And you're now having these athletes play high-level games, high-level competition on a frequent basis, not just, whenever there's a world championship or an Olympics. So you get a much better picture of what they're capable of and what they're doing. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the Canadian women's hockey program seems to be set about 15 years in the past. So until they look past that, and unfortunately it might take a disaster on Thursday to prove that it's time to move this program in a different direction, and it could be bad. I mean, they did not look good in that preliminary round game against the States when they lost. What was it, 5-0? I think was the final. Like that. All of a sudden, we look like the other countries that were trying to play catch up, and we're now not even in the conversation anymore. So I don't know what's going to happen. I obviously I will be cheering for Canada and hoping for the best. And one of the best games I ever saw for the Canadian and U.S. women's hockey gold medal games was 2016. That was a crazy game, and it came down to a goalpost saving it for Canada. It was just an insane gold medal game. But that level of competition and that closeness doesn't exist right now. So I think, unfortunately, it's probably going to be the U.S. that takes this game, and it might be handily. But I hope that Canada can show up and put in an effort and surprise everyone.
Well, I'll put it to you this way before I let you go, Manny. Sweden plays Switzerland in the bronze medal game. Switzerland won all of 1 game before upsetting Finland in the quarterfinals before losing to Canada 2-1 in the semis. They won the opening game against Czechia in overtime 4-3. They then lost their next 3 matchups in the preliminary round to get themselves to the quarterfinals, where they ended up upsetting again Finland. So that betting odds is in favor of Sweden. But not by that much, in all honesty. Canada, the U.S., is a wider margin. So the odds makers believe the Americans are going to repeat the effort they had, regardless of Marie-Philippe Poulin making her way back into the lineup for Canada. Manny, what's kind of your observation of that rematch between the Canadians and the States?
Well, let's give the women, both of these teams, some flowers, shall we? Like, this is the 8th consecutive time since women's ice hockey entered the Olympics at the 1998 Games that either Canada or the U.S. will take gold. Canada has won 5 gold medals. The U.S. have won 2. So with this eighth consecutive meeting, it looks like the U.S. are juggernauts. And you know what? I think they are too. I think JC pointed it out. The Americans are a young, fast team, while the Canadians have some cagey vets that they hope will respond in the gold medal final. I just think this comes down to offense. And right now, Canada's offense can be summed up in three words: Marie-Philippe Poulin, and they haven't been able to get anyone else. They beat Switzerland 2-1. She scored both goals, correct me if I'm wrong in that. And they outshot Switzerland 46-8 and only won 2-1. So if I'm the US team, I just need to shut down MPP. Easier said than done. That's going to be a tall task considering Marie-Philippe Poulin is the all-time leading goal scorer in Olympic hockey history. But I think if you look at the depth of the American team versus the Canadian team, that's where the Americans have the edge. And not only did they beat Sweden 5-0 in the semifinal, JC mentioned it, they beat Canada 5-0 in the round robin, the first time Canada has ever been shut out, their women's hockey team. So this is going to be a tall task for Canada. Wonder if the KG Vets might just have something up their sleeve to try to slow down the American offense. I'd be interested to watch that and see how that transpires on Thursday.
Well, Manny, I want to pick up where you left off, where you talk about the offense and its struggles. Blair Turnbull has one goal in this tournament. Lauren Stacey has one goal in this tournament. Breanne Jenner has one goal in this tournament. There's one more big one. Natalie Spooner has one goal in this tournament. And Sarah Nurse, no goals, 2 assists in her 5 games at the Olympic tournament this year. So you kind of mentioned it there, Manny. Without Marie-Philippe Poulin, who did miss 2 games, including that first American matchup, this Canadian offense has been rather bleak. And they're going to need to find a way to get into that next gear. And JC, to pick up where you left off, you mentioned the age discrepancy. The average age of the American team is about 25 years old. The Canadian team is 29 years old. That is a stark difference between these two clubs. And I even look at the Sweden-Swiss teams. Swiss is, I think, 23. Sweden's average age is 24. So this Canadian team is by far the oldest of the final 4 teams in the women's side of the Olympic Games. So I think that does kind of play to your guys' point that, maybe the KG Vets can get it done and they can show some of that experience, but also younger legs usually do prevail. There's usually kind of a reason why you see Macklin Celebrini skating with the 3M line, Macklin, McKinnon, and McDavid, because that's just the future of the men's hockey right now. And obviously we'll get to them in a second, but I do want to stick with you, Manny and JC, before we go off to the men's. Do you have a prediction for the women's final? Who do you think takes it? Do you have a final score there, Manny Pava?
Geez, if I'm making this prediction with my wallet, I'm going with the Americans. But if I'm making the prediction with my gray hair and my heart, because I'm a KG vet myself, let's say the Canadians pull it out 3-2. How about that?
What about you, JC? What's your final prediction for the gold medal match in the women's final?
I like Manny's approach of keeping your wallet and your heart separate. The wallet says the U.S. probably by something like 6-2, and the heart says Canada 3-2. I like that.
You know what? I think we'll say clean sweep Canada 3-2. I'll say in overtime. I think it will make its way into the history books here in Canadian Olympic history, just with the meaning of it, and obviously losing to the Americans and getting a chance to avenge that loss in the preliminary round. Now, we move to the men's side. Canada has been maybe the most impressive team of the men's side, you could say. The Americans have had some really good games this year. Finland had that 11-0 win over Italy. Other teams have had some really good performances. I'll go to you, JC. Obviously, Canada's played really well to begin this men's side of the hockey bracket. Has any other team really impressed you throughout this Olympic Games?
I think just watching the Swiss, I think they were quite impressive against Canada for a while there anyway. But they do have I was hearing all these familiar NHL names, and then I started Googling going, are they actually Swiss? Oh, they all are. They all are actually Swiss, but they look almost like Finnish names. So in some cases, you wouldn't think that they were Swiss, but between like Niederreiter and some of those players, they've been playing out of their minds. And it's really interesting to watch some of those teams that are not considered to be the favorites, like Germany and Switzerland and even France for a bit, really outperforming everything that they are to try to rise up to the level of the bigger countries like Canada and the U.S. So it's always fun to watch that, and I think the competition is much better than it used to be. So that's been quite a nice change watching this best on best tournament format. But really, yeah, I don't think there's any other huge surprises than just a few of those countries and how well they've done. Looking at the qualifying games that took place on Tuesday this week and the quarterfinal matches, I mean, there were no real upsets in those qualifying games, and I think the quarterfinals are, for the most part, going to be very interesting when they do happen tomorrow, which will be before we've taped this, so we have no idea what's going to happen, but. Yeah, I think it's all coming down. It all leads to what everybody predicted the final would be, which would be Canada and the U.S. No surprises there. But all in all, a pretty entertaining tournament and really cool to see some players have really made themselves bigger parts of their country's future when it comes to these best on best tournaments.
Yeah, every team collectively win, barring the hosts, Italy and France, who are the two lowest seeded teams in the men's 4-3 pools. So it definitely obviously mentions the parity too there, JC, of all these teams having, an NHLer. France only has one, Italy has none. I think other than those two, everyone's got at least 5-6 plus NHLers. And then obviously I believe it's Finland, Canada, or no, Sweden, Canada, the US have 25 NHLers of their 25-man rosters. Finland's got 24 of their 25-man roster, all from the NHL. Now, Manny, has any other team impressed you throughout this men's Olympic tournament?
Shout out to my boy Cristiano Di Giacinto, played for the Windsor Spitfires. He's playing for Team Italy. Although they didn't win a hockey game at the tournament, I'm sure playing at the Olympics is quite a feather in his cap. I like the level of competition where it seems there's a lot more parity, even though the Canadians have steamrolled and the Americans went undefeated as well. The one thing that I love to see the fight, Tom Wilson against the French defenseman who got suspended by his country too.
Not only got suspended, he's now facing criminal charges because apparently he jumped a goalie in the Italian league back in November, and they didn't press charges then. And then just today, the French police are like, "Hey, we saw what happened at the Olympics. We're going to chat when you get back."
Oh my goodness. This is like, I thought the Olympics handled it well not to hand out any suspensions to these guys after, like, you could even call it a fight. It was more of a wrestling match, let's be honest. But then the French Ice Hockey Federation bans Pierre Crinon, I hope I'm saying that correctly, because he doesn't represent their values and it was provocative behavior. Have they not seen a hockey game before? Like, what are we talking about here? I guess it just goes with the storyline in the Olympics, fellas. If there's not crotchgate with the ski jumpers and the other scandals that
Double
have
touch
rocked
gate with
the
curling.
Olympics.
Double touch gate there, Manny.
Yeah. Like, maybe this is on par for the Olympics this year. There's always got to be controversy. How about that other gold medal winner? I think it was from France too.
The biathlon skier.
Yeah, the biathlon who stole their teammate's credit card and racked up charges on that. Like, the scandals are remarkable.
Wife. That might be Crenon's wife.
Right.
We don't know.
And the guy confessing on national TV after winning a bronze that he cheated on his girlfriend. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, and that's the Norwegian skier who got third place. Other Norwegian skier got first place. His teammate got the gold medal, and they're right now, I believe, still leading the games in medal count right now. Is Norway? So shout out to them and their continued dominance of the Winter Games this year. But I'm happy you mentioned the Krinon suspension because there's one massive distinction that I want to make here. The IIHF is not who suspended him. It was not the governing body. It was not the IOC. It was the French Federation. It was his own governing body. It's like if Hockey Canada suspended Tom Wilson for the rest of the tournament because of the fight, which again, we all spoke about it before the tournament. No offense to Tom Wilson, who's having a great season with the Caps this year. That's his role. His role is to throw some hits, maybe score a couple goals, but he's there to be the enforcer. He's there to keep the other guys clean, to keep Macklin clean, to keep McKinnon clean in that example, to keep McDavid, to keep Sidney Crosby safe, because that's his role. And what upset me most about it personally, because again, it's the French Federation doing this, and I think they should back their player more than suspend him for, in my opinion, a really, really poor reason, is because it's not like he placed a dirty hit on McKinnon, then skated around, dropped his mitts, and was looking for a fight. He hit McKinnon in a vulnerable position. He apologized to him before he got sent to the box for his minor. He then comes out of the box, and it was 7 minutes left in the third period. Tom Wilson challenges him to a fight. They get into as you mentioned there, Manny, more of a scuffle where they both drop their mitts. Krinon throws Tom Wilson to the ice, and they kind of maybe say some unpleasant things in whatever language they can mutually speak, and they both get sent to the locker rooms because that's the IOC and IHF rules. You fight, you're tossed. Regardless of 5-minute major, you're just out. So I am upset because I think the Federation should have his back as a player. And I would think if you're a French athlete right now, especially with the Hockey Federation, I'd be worried if they have my back, regardless of situation, because how do you not have his back in a fight where, again, he wasn't the one trying to look for a fight. He wasn't the one going after Tom Wilson or going after, somebody else trying to instigate something. It was Tom Wilson grabbed him and he's like, okay, I guess we're going. And then ragdolled him, and obviously a lot of NHL fans, I said, unhappy he ragdolled because he's a Canadian, but happy he got ragdolled because obviously Tom Wilson creates a lot of ire within the NHL fan base with some of his antics throughout the NHL across other teams. But as a Bruins fan with Brad Marchand, I'm kind of used to hearing people complain and moan and whine about players doing dirty things, if you will. So, I was really baffled by it. Because, again, the IIHF and IOC did nothing about it, so I don't know why the French Federation stepped in and felt they needed to make this a bigger issue than it was, but I'll leave it there and just kind of complain.
A defenseman on France, Hugo Gallet, said it was biased by something that happened before. The French goalie called it a joke, but I don't know what quote-unquote provocative behavior means. That is the reason for a suspension. Not in the game of hockey, at least.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing on the ice that happened, Manny, that any of us saw is suspendable worthy, in my opinion. And I think you kind of illustrated there that you obviously agree with that opinion, that it's just there was nothing on the ice that anyone saw that deserved him to be suspended for the rest of this tournament, which obviously is not much longer for the French, but regardless. I do not want to go to a team that surprised me, which is Slovakia. They've done really well this tournament. They had an upset there in the round robin. They now topped their group above Sweden and Finland to get one of the byes into the quarterfinals. So shout out to Slovakia and Jurgi Slafkovsky, who's basically carrying me through Adrian Musso's Olympic pool. So thank you, Jurgi. I really appreciate it. Even though you're Montreal Canadian, you stink. I'm happy that you're having a good tournament. You're helping out with the pool. But guys, I do want to go back to Canada here because obviously they've had a very good tournament. That 10-2 win against France kind of being the exclamation mark for their number one seed throughout the pool. How do you look at the quarterfinals and then obviously a suspected semifinal, but obviously they play Czechia, who's been the thorn in the side of the World Junior team. How do you look at the Canadian men's team now as the quarterfinals and semifinals are upon us there, Manny Pava?
Yeah, I think it would be a massive upset if Canada did make the final. I think, Czechia is a good team, but I think if you look at the talent on the Czechia roster versus the Canadian roster, you expect the Canadians to win that one. Slovakia has Germany. Can Leon Draisaitl carry the Germans over Slovakia? I don't know about that. And I think the U.S.-Sweden matchup is a tough one. Switzerland, I think, will give Finland all they can handle. But if we're talking about the Canadian team, I just think up and down the lineup, the Canadians, if they do not make the final, it would be a major upset of Olympic proportions.
And that's almost regardless who they lose to, Manny, because I believe I heard before we jumped on here, they cannot play the U.S. or Slovakia. So they can't play right now the number 2 and number 3 seeds in the pool right now in the quarterfinals. So they're almost guaranteed to have possibly the best matchup after playing Czechia in the semi, the lowest seed for sure. So that should obviously, as you mentioned, it give them even the bigger leg up if you didn't want to say they were the best team on paper and have in practice if they've played throughout these games. They're going to play the easiest seed, the lowest seed, I should say. So most likely the easiest team. So that also should hopefully benefit them going into what would we all hope, of course, a gold medal matchup with, at this point, most likely the Americans, but hopefully Sweden can maybe cast a little upset there to the guys down south. Now, JC, what is your thoughts of this men's Olympic team as they clinch the first seed in every pool?
I've been pretty impressed. I think the fact that Jordan Binnington very quickly answered everybody's questions, that he seems to be legit. Like, as soon as you get out of St. Louis and you put that maple leaf on your jersey, everything changes. And all of a sudden, this is the guy that won an OHL championship, won a Stanley Cup, won the Four Nations Cup. Like, he's just designed to play in these high-pressure moments. Maybe not so much in St. Louis. Probably going to raise his trading stock a little bit too if he does win a gold medal here. But that helped. And then seeing a guy like Macklin Celebrini just be unbelievable. And how the last few tournaments we've seen young guys will make Team Canada, but either they'll be an extra player or they will just sit the entire tournament and watch. This time they actually took this guy, and not only did they not put him on the fourth line, they put him on the best line. You had 3 of the top 4 scorers in the NHL on the same line together. It's insane. And as a guy that watched Jason Spezza not get to play in an Olympics, it's really cool to watch a guy like Macklin Celebrini just show what he's got and was given the opportunity. Arguably, this could be one of the best Canadian Olympic teams ever. It's only the goaltending that isn't as good as those past teams, but everything else, this could be one of the best teams ever. Now, that said, they do have a bit of a history, and it's mostly from the World Juniors, of epic chokes on the way to getting to the final. Really, only the last time they choked on the way to the final, I think, was in 2006 in Italy. So I think this is going to be a much, much different story in Italy this time. And yeah, I think based on the way that it's a shame we didn't get to see a U.S.-Canada preliminary round game. That was the only one thing I was worried about, was that Canada really didn't have like a top tier opponent in that preliminary round. But it just seems the way that this team is built and the quality of players that are on it, that they'll be fine. They will adapt their game and bring their game up. And when you have guys like Connor McDavid putting other guys almost through the boards and commentators thinking that was Tom Wilson that did that, this is all these guys are playing differently and in a good way. So yeah, I think everyone's going to be pretty happy to get up early on Sunday morning.
I think you mentioned Macklin Celebrini there, JC, and I think a great point to mention is when Matthew Schaefer was a contender to make this team as either a reserve player for an injury replacement or actually just flat out make the roster when they were still talking about the 50-person, the 60, 70-person pool, many months ago. The reason why people wanted to bring an 18-year-old rookie in Matthew Schaefer was to be the 8th defenseman to not play, but to get a chance to be around these guys, to be around that environment, to get a chance to see it. So in 4 years, when hopefully the NHL are back at the Olympics in 2030, he will be maybe the guy that does, is the number one guy beside Cale Makar. But Macklin Celebrini's 19 in his sophomore season in the NHL, and he right now is one of the best Canadians. I think that's not hyperbolic to say when he's playing with Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid, and he's not looking at a place. Like, he's not looking like the third best forward on that line. Like, he is right with those two guys that have been perennial superstars in the NHL for years. And again, he's having a great year this year. And that's where people have to say, well, can he replicate it? Well, if he can do it with the Olympics, I mean, why can't he replicate it? Why can't he do that with San Jose with that young talent they have right now down in California there with the Sharks? So, it's such a great sight to see a 19-year-old kid playing this well at his first Olympic Games in, arguably the highest stakes hockey he's ever played in his life. And getting a chance to really show his stuff and not, I'll say, wilting to the pressure, but really being able to, thrive under it and getting a chance to really show that he is of that quality that, maybe wasn't necessarily expected because he wasn't hyped like Connor Bedard was coming out of the WHL. He wasn't hyped like Nathan McKinnon was coming out of the QMJHL or Connor coming out of the OHL. He wasn't out of the NCAA. He was seen as a good player and a great two-way player, but he wasn't seen as maybe that X factor type of guy. And now he's really showing that, no, he is an X factor for this Canadian team. Now, we have about a couple minutes here, guys. I do want to get obviously to the other games because the Canadians have, I believe, currently 3 or 4 gold medals throughout the games. Manny Pava, are there any other events that really caught your eye? Anything you've been really trying to catch your eye on? Obviously, with the time change, things are a little bit more difficult with some of the games being at 6 in the morning. But anything else you've been trying to catch throughout these Olympic Games?
So I watched Mikhail Kingsbury's gold medal run on the weekend. The dual moguls is wild. Like I'm fascinated by some of these sports that we never really see on a regular basis. Like the dual moguls. First of all, Kingsbury finished silver in the other competition because about turn time or something like that, they had the best score. But he had to settle for silver because the other competitor had a better turn time. But the dual moguls, I can't remember if it was the quarterfinal or the semifinal run where the competitor basically skied right in front of him. Like, how do you not lose your focus and still be able to finish at a decent time? I thought that was incredible. And the fact that you had to, the pain on the knees, like my knees are rough. Like, my knees were in pain watching that dual moguls competition. The other thing that has stood out for me, guys, is the Canadian men and women curling teams getting into chirp fests with the other curling teams. Now, they both had a good day on Tuesday. They both won, so that's great. They're moving on. But the chirp fests have been something to see in the curling competition. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, a rather subdued sport, really getting into fireworks, you could say there, Manny. JC, about a minute, little less than a minute. Any sports that you've really been interested in watching throughout these Olympic Games?
I love a lot of the sports. Ski jump is incredible to watch. Manny mentioned the moguls. Yeah, my knees hurt just watching that event as well. Bobsled. I mean, I was the Cool Runnings generation, so I love bobsled. And you know what? There's a lot of exciting events. I mean, we still have chances to medal in like snowboard cross and ski cross, short track speed skating. We always do so well in speed skating. So I think there's still a lot more medals to come in this last like half week of competition.
Yeah, I will just quickly mention that Brad Jacobs and the men's team, as Manny mentioned, won today. They are now qualified for the semifinals. They have 2 more round-robin games to see where they will seed. Shout out to Brad Jacobs and the Canadian men's team who will qualify and have a chance to play for a medal in men's curling, something that the mixed and I believe the women have kind of struggled with to begin, but obviously still have chances for them. But that'll be it here for us. Spencer Byers, Manny Pava, JC Coots. We'll see you next week here on RTV Sports Rap.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com. Are you a content creator looking to expand your audience and make your voice heard in your community? Rogers TV wants to provide you with a platform to share your hobbies, interests, and stories for free. Visit us to find out more.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm so happy to have these prosthetic legs. I wear them every day so I can do all the things I love to do. I like to hike, skate, and do gymnastics. Because of your donations,